This conference will now be recorded.
There we go. There we go. It lost its focus. Okay. What's going on there? Oh, my animations got all jacked up when I put it in this deck. All right, so this is a little bit about me. I am a Microsoft Certified Master. I am also an MVP, and I do have a few book credits out there, et cetera, et cetera. Most important thing, and you guys may not be able to see it on the line. In fact, my little red pointer doesn't work too well up on the screen anyway. But up in the middle, there's a little silhouette of a family. Besides SQL Server, you guys might have heard this before. Besides SQL Server, family is super important to me. You know, so I do spend a lot of time with family type events, whether it's coaching football, baseball, basketball, softball, soccer. I don't do cricket. But it does take up a lot of my time. So just like SQL Server does. So that's my work-life balance right there. I do have 5 kids, as the silhouette depicts, and I only have 1 wife. Okay, no, it's Utah. There's not 14 of them. There's just 1. The kids keep me more than busy enough, though. That aside, I am the co-founder of Database Masters. SQL Ops Masters is our actual company name. We do business as Database Masters. Partner is Wayne Sheffield out of Virginia. He's also an MCM and MVP. And to your question about dental databases, currently we do consult for several dental companies, such as Dental Select on the insurance side and Dentrix on the application side. All right, so if you're interested, if your bosses might be interested, I got to put that plug out there. We also do consult for the Utah Jazz. Okay, so we keep ourselves rather busy enough, but sometimes we're always trying to push for a little bit more work and always trying to do some more community stuff. And that's more about speaking today and less about the consulting, even though I just pushed that. Okay, so don't kick me too hard. So what are we talking about today? Extended events. And before we get too far into it, I do want to talk about barriers to entry. I have to talk about this in every extended event session that I do, because still a lot of people don't know what extended events are, or is proper, because extended events is the name. I got to stay right here. Forget, I don't have a mic. So
it picks up pretty good.
Okay.
So you can wander
Okay.
a little bit.
All right. Hi, welcome, Neil. But even to this day, SQL Server has had extended events in the database engine for how long? Do you guys know?
2008 or 2005?
2008. That makes us how many years at this point? 11 years. All right. And still people haven't heard of it. It's still new. 11 years is like flying in the spruce goose at this point. Okay. Technologically speaking, it's been around a long time. It's pretty advanced, but people still don't know about it. And part of the reasons why they don't know about it is what I want to talk about here, the barriers to entry. So how many of you guys, including the people on the phone, how many of you guys use extended events? 1, 2, 3. No. Okay. Colin does. Yay, Colin. All right. So that's 4 out of, is that less than 50%? I don't know how many people we have in total. Andrea's looking it up. Maybe not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. So less than 50% of the people here. All right. Those of you that don't use it, why don't you use it?
Until 16, it didn't have, it was really hard to do.
Until 16?
Okay.
Okay.
16 made it easier.
Okay, so she says until 2016 it became easier. Why did it become easier in 2016?
Because there was more visibility in the interface, like in the UI, than instead of just
Okay. Myth. All right. That started in 2000. The UI was there in 2012.
Oh,
Okay,
it wasn't.
and it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. It's the same UI. How about you?
Well, first time I heard about it.
Was for this session?
Yeah, first time it is, yeah.
Okay, how about you?
I heard of it, I just haven't used
Too new, too different, too little time? Okay. Here's some of the other reasons that I've heard, right? I didn't throw GUI up there because, well, the GUI has been out for 7 years. So, but that is actually a common reason that people use. There's no GUI. I want to throw another one up there, and that's because Microsoft had deprecated Profiler a long time ago, but then they reintroduced Profiler as XE Profiler with SSMS 17.3. All right. Actually, they call it X Advanced Profiler. Now they changed it just to XE Profiler. Okay. Microsoft's not here, so I'm going to be loud and proud about this. Don't use that piece of crap XE Profiler. Okay. It is an absolute waste of your time. Absolute piece of crap. Don't touch it. Don't even open it. Don't even get curious about it. All right. I got plenty of reasons why on my blog as to why it sucks. Okay. Besides the fact that it now confuses you, people are always saying, don't use Profiler, it'll kill your server. Now I see Profiler right there. Wait, Profiler, what am I doing? XE Profiler, you know, they have a nice little GUI. It does two things. Starts 2 terrible sessions. You can't change the sessions with the XE Profiler. All it gives you is the ability to start the sessions. And they are Profiler style sessions where it's fire hose effect and it just captures everything. Okay, don't do it. All right. One of my favorites up here was actually esoteric knowledge required for extended events. Now we'll talk about this when we get to creating sessions because I want to touch on how to create a session real quick before we go into monitoring. But how many of you know how to create a table? Stored proc, trigger, foreign key, you know, database. Our basic syntax is create, alter, and drop, right? For those types of objects. And that is what they were calling esoteric. That's our syntax for creating extended events. I don't need to have any sort of esoteric knowledge. And if I want to be super lazy, I can use the GUI. And I don't need to have any T-SQL knowledge at all, right? It gives me the descriptions about the events. It gives me the descriptions about the payload that's delivered with those events. And basically allows me to filter and do all sorts of things inside of the GUI already, okay? Correlate perfmon distributed replay. That's a complete joke. You can do it. Takes one more step, okay, than if you were to do it otherwise. And how many people have ever correlated perfmon to a profiler trace? Not a single person in here. You're all looking at me like, what's that even mean? You take Windows perfmon, you run some counters, and you start a profiler trace, and you can actually overlay the two of them so that you can see, oh, this statement ran at this time, and I saw a CPU spike at this time. You can do the same thing with extended events, right? But it has been a common excuse for not using extended events. All right, so those are the barriers. I want to say, you know, XML is a pretty big barrier. If you love XML, you're lying to the whole world, including yourself. All right, XML is a dirty little beast. We don't necessarily love it. We just learn to deal with it. Okay. And the truth of the matter is, extended events isn't stored in XML anyway. It's some developer thought it was just awesome to decode the binary format into XML so that we could read it. And so when they do that, now we have to convert it to human readable form. So no biggie there. All right. Developers. Any developers in here? Okay. Or all right.
Should have another code like they do.
You know, that's a common joke, but I like that. I might add that one in there. But these ones, I think they get the point across because, hey, you give me 128 gigs of RAM on a server. As a developer, I'm going to take all 128 gigs. You know, you give me a Mustang, you know, GT to drive down the street. You know, I rented Mustang GT. I'm not going to baby that thing around, right? It's not your car. It's been rented. So you're flooring it every chance you get, right? You know, insert favorite, you know, Lamborghini, Ferrari, hot rod, whatever in there. It's the same thing. You give me the resources, I'm just going to floor it. And it's on us on the other end of things to kind of watch for when somebody's trying to floor it and use all of our resources. That's where extended events comes in real handy. Okay. What makes up extended events? Well, first off, I don't have the slide in this deck, but for instance, in SQL Server 2017, there are over 1,500 different events. In SQL Server 2008, there were over 300 events. You want to compare that to profiler / server-side trace. Server-side trace in 2008 had 160 events. To this day, it has 160 events. Why? Because it's deprecated. It's been deprecated since extended events was introduced. All right. So each of those events comes with a whole bunch of data. We call that data the payload. Just like with a satellite system, we launch a satellite into space with a rocket. The delivery mechanism, let's call it SQL Server or extended events. And then we have some data or that satellite that's being delivered to wherever we're trying to reach it to, you know, outer space, to your laptop, whatever. That data for whatever event is our payload. Okay. One of the most critical pieces of extended events is that right there. Looks kind of like a waste bin, right? It's not a waste bin. What is it? Filter. All right. I don't know. I haven't seen too many filters that look like that, you know, but I think of a coffee filter when I look at that almost, but that's metal, not paper, right? So the filter there does what? What's a filter do for us in SQL servers? Reduces, yeah. Sets our focus to what we want. It's also known as a predicate, which is also comes with what keyword? Where, or on, or and, right? Okay. So it's like saying, you know, as DBA, when you're trying to change the social security number for Joe Smith, and you go out to the social security table and you say, update SSN equal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 from your SSN table, and then you end it, right? We've all done that. Now what do we have? 360 million people in the United States all have the same social security number, right? There's nothing wrong with that, right? That's exactly what Profiler does to us. You can try to set filters, you can try to change things in Profiler, but it doesn't actually work. The filters don't work. Inside of extended events, they do work, all right? If it doesn't match, if that predicate doesn't match at all, it immediately throws it to the side. It doesn't process anything more as soon as it hits to something that doesn't match. Profiler, everything is always processed every single time an event is fired. Even if you have, doesn't matter what predicates you have on there, doesn't matter how you try to filter it, it's going to fire hose everything into your trace. Next important thing, these things called actions. Sometimes they're called global variables. Sometimes they're called actions. And sometimes I prefer to just say they're functions. All right. Some of the actions that we have in extended events are DB or database underscore ID, database underscore name. And if I want to get database ID or database name from SQL Server, what are the functions I would do? DB underscore ID, open close parents, DB underscore name, open close parents. Or we have timestamp in there for an action. I want a timestamp in SQL Server, what do? In T-SQL. I just type get date, right? Pretty much. Those are functions. Get date, DB time, or DB ID, DB name. Those are functions. Do you ever think twice about running a function like that inside a SQL Server because it's slow? Or do you just type it in, hit go, and execute it, and it's done immediately, and it processes and outputs the results? That's kind of the way actions work inside of extended events. They are very fast and efficient type of additional payload to add on to your event. Sometimes we don't have a database name that comes with the event. So we'll throw in the database name so that we can figure out what it is. Highly efficient, with the exception of 2 of them. All right, 2 of them are kind of slow. 1 of them will actually cause your server to shut down. All right, and if you want to know which one it is, go ahead and go read my blog. Right, I'll give you the link to where you can find the most comprehensive source about extended events out there in the web sphere. Okay, here at the end. And then the last thing, when do you ever trap information or trace information to a point that you can't consume it and review it at a later point in time? Just doesn't happen. Why would we trace anything if we can't review it? And that's where this comes in. This is the targets. Target is a destination for your trace data. I send my trace data either to a file or to memory or to, maybe I want to send it to a histogram type of bucketizer so I know how many times the event is firing that meets those conditions. That way I can review it, right? Today, when we're talking about monitoring, there's some additional types of targets that we might want to talk about. I don't have any examples for another type of target. We won't talk about it, but also know that Extended Events has a service broker target. It came out with 2017. So in theory, I could set up a service broker queue to sit there and monitor my Extended Events sessions and have that delivered to some sort of application or other service that can handle that event and do something for me. That's the service broker target. But today we're going to talk about some custom targets that have been created so that we can monitor and alert based off that, regardless whether it's 12, 14, 16, 17, 19, whether we have that service broker target or not. All right. When we read event data, there's one time that we may not have to specify a target. All right. Well, 2 times. Okay. If you use that piece of crap called XE Profiler, it doesn't actually specify a target. It immediately opens everything up and starts replaying it on your screen for you. Okay. So if you're on a very busy server and it's scrolling, you're not keeping up with it. I'm sorry, it's just not happening. That's called the live data viewer. All right. And it comes out of the extended event live event stream. All right. That target is attached to every extended event session regardless. You can't stop it from being created, and you can't tell it to create it. It is a private target. It is consumable only by the internals of SQL Server, or creatable by the internals of SQL Server. All right. There's another way we can do it. We can go ahead and view target data when we're inside the GUI. I'll show you how we can go and open up an extended event session target file. I can use T-SQL to read the target file. So I can use the GUI. I can use T-SQL. I can go ahead, I can watch it live stream to me. I can also do an XE Reader API. So I don't even have to have Management Studio open. I can write an application that'll tap into the XE Reader API and stream that data for me And the monitoring stuff we're going to talk about today actually uses the XE Reader API. All right. And then open merge XEL files. What's an XEL file? Extended event log. Right? When I create an extended event session and tell it to use a file target, then the type of file that's created is a .xel file. That's saved out on disk somewhere. I don't have to open that file up on the server where it was created. I can take that file and copy it to any other machine that has Management Studio installed and open it up from that machine. No special permissions required, as long as you have access to that XEL file, right? I do that for my clients all the time, restricted environments. I just have them email me the XEL files. I load them up in my Management Studio, look at all their events, parse through it, send them my diagnosis, all right? So one of the things that we talked about right back here, if I can get there, was this development environment, right? Developers, we don't have access to that trace data in prod. Well, guess what? If I feel like there's no confidential information being stored in that log file, I can copy it out and send it to you. And you can open it up on your machine yourself. And you don't need to have prod access. You have access to your machine, your SSMS. You open up the XEL file and you can group and aggregate however which way you want, right? Within the GUI. And I'll show you how to do some of that real quick.
Think faster.
I'm trying to.
I'm just-
Okay, so all of that stuff ready to go there. Let's go ahead and try to look at some sample extended event sessions. And I actually I changed laptops recently and I don't remember if I put all my sessions on this one. That's fine. Okay, so, X event profiler right here. This is the latest one. So it went from XE profiler to X event profiler. So if you're looking at this, right there, we have X event profiler. This is the thing that I want you to stay out of, all right? It's going to show it to you for the sake of showing it to you, but you have X event profiler. I can start 2 sessions. I cannot modify those sessions there. I can't do anything other than stop session, launch session, right? And you notice how neither one of those is grayed out. I don't know if it's actually running or not. Developer didn't think about that one there, all right? Launch session, I can click it over and over and over and over again. I can also click stop session over and over and over and over again. After the first time, it really doesn't do anything. It just continues to pretend to do something, all right? So I want to stay out of that, okay? You should stay out of it too. Friends don't let friends use profiler. Okay, so I am in the latest, I'm in 17.9.1 Management Studio, and I don't know if I have any sessions running, but I have a couple, all right. You can see I've got, actually for some recent articles I wrote, so auto-tune was a feature in 2017, right? We also have my DB file changes, anytime my database file tries to grow or shrink. And then also I can monitor my agent jobs anytime somebody makes a change to my agent jobs. You never have any of that happen, right? Agent job changes and all of a sudden you're like, why did this change? Who changed it? Well, that's what kind of drove that. The client was trying to figure out why a job changed the schedule or why it suddenly started failing. So we threw that in and we started catching some developers red-handed because they were using a backdoor. All right, so same sort of thing. Those are there. I'm not going to go into those ones, all right? But what we can do, I want to show you. I don't use the wizard, but we'll go ahead and open up the GUI. I'm going to have to shrink this back down. You guys can see it back there? All right. So session name cannot be empty. Okay, requirement number 1 met, right? It changed. My session name is still empty, but that's fine. Cannot create a session without any events. Those are the 2 requirements to be able to create a session from within the GUI. Doesn't tell you, oh, you need to have a predicate. Doesn't tell you, oh, you need to have a target. You know, you really should think about those things. Not every event can have a predicate. Not every event necessarily needs to have a predicate, but you need to consider those. All right. Next important thing right here. This is something that a lot of people fail to understand, is that we have templates for extended events, just like in Profiler back in the day. And we've had these templates available inside of extended events ever since 2012, starting with the Profiler equivalents. Notice how it says they are Profiler equivalents. And if you look at standard and T-SQL, the second and third one down under Profiler equivalents, you'll notice that X-Event Profiler has them listed over there. All they did is they created a shortcut button right here to copy that template down into the GUI down below. All right. If I create a session with those templates, I can at least create filters. I can also set a target so that I can maybe copy that XEL file off to a developer's workstation so they can do something about it, right? Okay. Use it. If you don't want to use T-SQL, fine by me. You know, I use T-SQL to create most of my sessions. If it makes more sense, please just use the GUI. You know, get in there. You'll see all this stuff. You just play around with it. It takes just a few clicks. All right. Okay. So I'm not going to use any of those templates. I'm just going to bounce into the events right here. One of the things right here inside of events that I want to point out real quick, I can filter all of these events by starting to type in that field, event library. Okay. Now, that may not actually have all of them, because one of the things that's filtered out right here is under channel, debug is turned off. Okay, so you might be able to see some additional events there. You may not need them. Excuse me. Microsoft tries to sway you. PSS says, don't go use any debug events unless you're on the phone with Microsoft. Well, the deadlock event, if you want to capture deadlocks, that's in the debug channel. Okay, so kind of weigh it for yourself, figure out what you want to do or not do. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go with degree of parallelism for this event right here as we go to continue to set the things up. I'm just going to double tap that, and then this is where it gets important. See that filter that I have right there where my cursor is? Notice it says nothing is down below it. So I know that nothing's been configured on this event, but I know I can also go ahead and go through and configure it if I hit the configure button. Now I can go through and click on the predicate right there and create a filter. All right. Do I want to filter anything out? Maybe I want to just look for anything that's right here. I'm looking for anything that's a statement type of 1, and maybe it's going to type for. Oh, it wants me to. So this is where the map values come into play. I'm just going to go with delete. I was going to type a number 1 because when you're doing it with the SQL, when you're setting it up in T-SQL, you have to use the numeric values. The GUI translates that because there's a little table in extended events that has all those translations for you. All right. So delete. Anytime somebody comes through and deletes anything from one of these tables, I want to know about it, right?
And if you script this out, you'll see the numeric value.
You should see the numeric value. Okay. How about global fields or actions? I mentioned earlier we have database ID and database name. How about that? What if I wanted to do that one right there? The one that's highlighted in blue. Can you guys see that back there?
That sounds scary.
So what do you think it does? It gives a description right there. It stops SQL Server. If any sort of event specified with a delete type statement processes on your server in this setup, then SQL Server will stop. We don't want to do that one. Okay,
Maybe
that's
one of those debugging things.
that's one of the ones you do have to be very careful about, right? Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and do database ID and database name. Next important thing, okay, so we're just talking about degree of parallelism. We're going to go on to data storage. This is where the targets are. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and set an event file. In my path. Side note, I always change it from the default location. I don't like to use the SQL Server default location because that's in your program files path. Drill down until you get to the logs folder. That's where it puts it. All right. I'd rather have all my extended event files in the same location. I can manage the permissions on that differently, and I can also take and archive them more easily if it's a shorter path. I use C because it's my presentation laptop. You know, if you have a volume for that kind of things on your servers, change it to a different volume. You know, just make sure it's a standard that you use across all the servers. That way it's the same location and you can use the same event files across servers. All right, I'm not going to change anything else over here. After I get to 5 files or to 1 gig per file, you know, it'll create another file and another file until I get to 5 and then roll over. Easy enough to go there. And then this is so I can configure any other things like multiple event loss or single event loss, or not allow any event loss. No event loss will cause it to slow down just a little bit, but you're still talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 times faster than profiler. Okay, so from there, I'm ready to click OK, right? It's a trap question.
It's a trap.
We never click OK from any sort of GUI in Management Studio.
We always script it out, right?
We script it and then hit cancel. Okay. So that's what the esoteric language looks like right here. I'm going to close the magnifier. Okay. So you see the statement type for delete is the numeric value, right? Anything there look crazy out of the norm for writing T-SQL. No, this is pretty easy stuff, right? Create event, add event, where, all right, that's standard T-SQL there. I'm going to go ahead and add a target. I'm telling it where to put that target, right? Nothing special there. Okay, that's a sample session, you know. And as luck would have it, I actually use the degree of parallelism event to do quite a few different types of table types audits. Somebody touches the table, I can tell every person that touched that table because I usually also add the session name, the user session name, session username, right? So I have that information, I can audit that. And if somebody has questions about who's touching a table, you know, same sort of trick with monitoring SQL Server agent jobs. Who's touching that table? Well, here it is. Here's the script that they executed. Here's the time that they did it and the person that they did it. And then we can go talk to them. It's not being a paranoid DBA, it's just an experienced DBA. You learn from time that unless you have evidence, the usual answer will be, I didn't do it.
I've had people that have denied it even after I had collected that information.
Right?
To show.
Yeah. I have this information right here. It says your workstation, this timestamp, your name, this statement, and look at that. If that statement's even formatted to your unique coding style. I didn't do it. Okay. Well, this is going in, this is still going on to your manager, because this is the evidence and this is the way we go. No sense in going and talking to people and asking them to offer up. Hey, anybody know what happened here? I don't know. That's always the answer. I don't know. I didn't do it. Really? You didn't do it? A log say differently. So all sorts of different ways to monitor and use, this is an out-of-box solution right here for extended events. Usually we don't use extended events for auditing unless we're setting up a server-side audit, which uses extended events private classes, right? But this is a cheap cost solution right here where we can go ahead and add something in, poor man's audit, throw it in there, be able to audit what's going on, give ourselves more information, especially when we're troubleshooting a problem, or go into the more complex situations that more complex solutions. I'm not going to show any of them today, but I'll show a server login audit along with the monitoring there in just a bit. Okay, so back to the slides, if only for a brief moment. One of the things that's similar to PowerShell, but not quite with the same power as PowerShell, is with extended events, because there are so many events and so much data that can be trapped with it. If you can think it most likely can be done with extended events to provide an audit solution or a troubleshooting solution or a monitoring solution to help you be a better DBA or developer or data professional. Okay, so monitoring with extended events. We use the XE Reader API and use PowerShell. I said just a minute ago, similar to PowerShell, extended events. If you can think it, you can do it. Absolutely true with PowerShell, right? Okay. If you can imagine a requirement, you've most likely, I haven't run into a case yet where I couldn't do it with PowerShell. Even with my low-level skills, I can find a way. I'm not somebody like Christy Lemaire or Rob Sewell. I'm not good like them, right? But I can get myself around in PowerShell and I can get it done. PowerShell offers you that ability, right? Combine that ability now with the ability of extended events to practically monitor everything inside the SQL Server that you can imagine. And now we just think a little bit more, we can figure out how we can go ahead and create a solution that is going to monitor these different conditions for us and alert us when it gets to a certain threshold, or maybe just log it to an archive or history table for review later. All right. Okay. So trigger email. PowerShell, we can write the event to the database. We can send out an email. And there's another thing that I didn't put up here, and that is we can actually have PowerShell execute a different SQL statement, for instance, if we want. Hey, this event occurs. Let's go ahead and run this for that condition. Maybe SQL agent job failed, if we're monitoring for that. Okay. We have a SQL statement that says, okay, go execute this other job instead. If you didn't go through and set everything up, or maybe you have a whole series of different files, or you have to reset something in order for it to go on, you can have it do that and automate for you. Okay. I really should move that out of the way. I think it's blocking everybody from the view of that top. There we go. All right. So extended events going to do the heavy lifting for you as far as figuring out what data you're going to trap. Oh shoot! I changed my focus again. Okay. Lots of insight. Very lightweight, very efficient. I said earlier, it's easily 10 times faster than Profiler, and worst case scenario, I think it was 3 times faster than just the server-side trace. Okay, trying to weigh it down with the worst possible events you could possibly capture and the worst possible predicates out there. and it still outperforms both server-side trace and profiler, right? It's not even close. Very helpful for monitoring. I can do real-time monitoring. I can archive it. I can, I was not expecting that. Okay, I guess I need to go back through it again. It can be used for alerting, and we're going to go through that. It's kind of repeat there. Track deadlocks, poor man audits, kind of alluded to that. I want to monitor errors and conditions. You know, maybe you have a ghost cleanup process. Anybody ever run into a ghost cleanup process that was lagging behind? Who knows what the ghost cleanup is? Okay, ghost cleanup, whenever you delete records from inside a SQL Server, they're not immediately deleted, they're soft deleted. The ghost cleanup comes through and completes that. Basically, you know, the records become, you know, they're soft deletes. They're not completely removed. They're turned into, let's call it ghosts for lack of a better term at this point, you know, because they're still there, but they're not accessible from within the DBMS. You can't actually query them. But you can see that if you go out onto the database pages, you can actually see the data still there. So well, in truncate it deallocates the page, so the whole page is ghosted, right? Instead of the individual row. Yeah, it cleans that up, cleans up individual row deletes off of the pages, so it comes through and you know, so you have this half erased row on the page. It comes through and finishes erasing it completely for you. All right. And the tools that we use, I worked with the person that actually wrote these. They've been integrated from a DLL type of system. He initially created them as an executable on the system. Now we've worked together and we've converted them to PowerShell. They are included in DBA tools at this point. It's called DBA XE Smart Table Writer, DBA XE Smart Email, and XE Smart Targets. That's the one start the target. Okay, so that you can send out the alerts or send it out to a table. All right, we'll go into how that works. XE Smart Target. This is going to be your cheap, no frills solution to monitoring SQL Server so that we can put SentryOne out of business. Not that I would really want to put them out of business because I like SentryOne. It's the best monitoring tool out there until you write your own personal one. The rule of thumb is if there's something out there that you can do, like, you know, SentryOne for monitoring and alerting, fine, great, you know, but the best solution is always the one that you develop yourself because it is applicable specifically to your own personal database environment. Anyway, so these are some of the types of targets in XE Smart Target. We have an email response, we have a replay response, table appender response, we have a T-SQL executor response, and we also have a table aggregator response. Table aggregator, what's that one do? That one was actually just released 3 days ago. Okay, so the table aggregator is we go, rather than writing it all out to the table and I have to use T-SQL to aggregate it, it aggregates it for you. So it says, okay, you got 17 of these events, and then it writes it out into the table. You got 93 of these types of events, it writes it out to the table. Or if you want to say your group by is by the person executing them, then it writes it out to the table group by that person. Okay, so aggregates before it puts it in the table for you. Oh, I forgot to show you the aggregation stuff. We'll get to it in a minute, okay? The smart target, whether you do the executable or the PowerShell, you know, unfortunately, this is one of those things where you do have to have something started up for you. It's not an automatic kind of like a service, but you can add it to like a Windows Task Scheduler, or you can have a service type of API that runs automatically on Windows reboots that starts this target for you, right? Don't run it on your database server. Run it on basically like your monitoring server, like just the same way you would with SentryOne. You have a tools server, you put it on that server. Why? That way you're not consuming any of the resources from your database server. And then, if I wanted to, I could take, let's say we take that table appender response, I want to write it back out to the database. I can write it out to a different database, a central database, where I'm writing it for all of my servers. Maybe I want to write back out to the source server. It's totally doable if you don't have another server, another database server. Maybe you want to replay it on a different database server. You send it out to your dev database server and replay it there. So just replay the statements out there for you on that server so you can kind of see what the load is producing on that server. Or send it to an email. Hopefully your email server isn't also your database server. In this kind of setup, I use a table appender response. And what I have done for some of my clients is I have these monitoring solutions running on a server in their environment, gathers from their servers, and writes it up to an Azure database server for me. So the point there being, I don't have to be even in the same data center as them. I can send it out to Azure. I can send it out to somewhere else that's secure as well and have that there so that if you wanted to run statistics or some sort of heuristics against all of your servers, in my case being a consultant for all of my client servers, I can do that from one repository without having to go out and merge a whole bunch of XEL files. Makes it a little bit easier. Okay. Questions? Yeah, where's the soda pop?
No, it's cool.
Okay. All right. So let's hope that this one works right. This demo. Okay. So we're going to go into a little bit of a demo on how to monitor with extended events. It disconnected me. The beauty of the internet is so slow when you need it to go fast.
I know, right?
Give it just a minute there. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, if I were to execute this as the executable, I have, in this case, I'm actually, for this particular JSON file, I can store JSON configurations for the executable out on the server in a nice little repository. Let's call it c:/database/configs, right? Kind of like \xe, right? And then I'm going to give it some information about what I want to capture. The session name is that in this case, I want to capture my server login audit. I want to capture every time my developers are logging into the server. I get the statements that they're executing. I'm getting the timestamps. I'm getting their the databases they're touching and the source machine name. So I know what machine they're coming from. So for instance, if for some reason they happen to be using SA login and they shouldn't be, I will know. I'm just going to send this back to local. I'm going to send it into a database called DBA. And I've got a table out there called local login audit. I'm going to go ahead and output these columns from my trace into that table. And if you want to take a look at what that table looks like, right here, and no, it was, come on, right here. Colin has left. So you can see right here, I've got a bunch of inquiries. I have trapped various different times in the database as I was testing this out for when a login was occurring. Luckily, I'm the only one that was logging into this particular box because I'm the only one that should. All right. So that's happening. I'm writing it back out to this particular table, the login audit with that specific trace. All right. And that target. So, but how does that work? How are we running that target? I showed you the configuration for the target. I've shown you the resulting data set and the target itself. So, but how do we actually write data to it? And that comes right here. And it's not formatted very well, so it's very wide, and I apologize for that. Right here, this is the one that we're going to focus on. Okay, so I am able to monitor my session with basically 3 lines of code, right? PowerShell script. First, I'm going to specify what the columns are that I want to pull out of that. We saw those columns in the table. We'll also see those columns in that JSON script file. Okay. I don't have to use the JSON script file, by the way, if I'm using the PowerShell version. The PowerShell version is easier to demo. So I have the columns. My response with those columns. Code blue, code blue.
Emergency apartment, room 35.
All right.
Emergency apartment, room 35. Code stroke 1, emergency apartment, room 35.
We got it? Okay. All right. Line 27, we see the $ response. New DBA XE Smart Table Writer. I tell it what my instance is, and this, well, in this particular case, I have it set up so I'm sending it up to my Azure instance, XE Server, Windows.net. I'm not going to scroll over so you can see my password. All right. I could also send it to, if I go up the lines above that, I can also insert it into Azure. Or I was testing it out. You see the note there says Azure via synonym, so that I can obfuscate the password and everything from clients and not have them. Yeah. Right. Okay. I don't need somebody going up there and tweaking around with the data that I'm sending up there. All right. So we send it to table writer. I'm giving it a database name that it wants to go to. I'm telling it the table name, local login audit in that case. So that's line 22. And then on line 23, start DBA XE Smart Target. SQL instance, my session name, server login audit, responder is my $ response, which is the line above that. 3 lines of code. Now I'm monitoring for that particular event session. So what's the downside? Right? Nothing's for free. Right? It doesn't cost me anything to be able to use PowerShell and extended events to be able to monitor my servers, except time. The downside is I'm going to have to go out and figure out what I want to have monitored, which, okay, if I'm using SentryOne, I have to go out and I have to figure out what I want to have monitored as well. And then I have to dial that in. So, okay, that's almost a wash. I have to figure out what events I'm going to monitor. That's still kind of a wash because I have to go and configure everything in SentryOne or Redgate SQL Monitor or SolarWinds. I don't care what your tool is. You still have to dial every single one of them in order to get it working the way you need it. So in this case, the real downside is I've got to go out and I've got to create the database objects myself. Okay, if I wanted to do an email responder, let's go up a few lines. And I just gave away some information there. You guys can't use it anyway because it's secured. Okay. Email response. Okay, it's a little bit longer. Okay, why? Well, I need to be able to know what my SMTP server is. I need to know who I'm sending it to. I need to know who the sender was, and I can put in any email address for that sender, right? What my subject is, body, attachment, etc. Okay, that's easy enough. Email response. I've got that. New DBA XE Smart email at params. Okay, or $, or yeah, at params, because I just set up that array in the parameters variable, right? And then after that, start DBA XE Smart Target. Boom, done, responder, email response. In this case, the SQL instance and the session. Of course, the session is coming from the XE session on the server that we want to monitor. Okay. So now I'm sending out email responses too. So, and if I were actually to turn that on right now and start doing stuff inside of the server, you'd see that I'd start getting, my phone would start beeping at me. Okay. I don't want to blow up my phone.
Why not?
What's your email address? Right? Okay. But I hope it's enough to see that, okay, I've got all this, it's not faked data that I put into that table, right? That's legitimate data over and over and over again. I can put it into Azure. I can put it into local. It doesn't matter where the database server is. I can put it into that database server. If I wanted to monitor an Azure instance as well, maybe I want to monitor Azure DB. It's the same thing, all right? I just need, for the instance, my target SQL instance, I'm just putting XE server.database.net, my Azure DB instance. Easy enough, right? Now I'm monitoring extended events on Azure DB. And I'm sending them out to somewhere else. I don't have to worry about paying for Microsoft's Azure monitoring service that you can add on for Azure. I've got that there. Okay. The whole idea is to be able to get to know your systems more intimately and monitor more freely, free, right? Okay. So, if I want to go ahead, and I don't have it, why don't I not have it? One more thing about this, right here. So you can actually see that, yes, it does work with the smart target. I'm going to scroll all the way down here. There's a lot of issues so I mentioned that I had gone back and forth with the actual author of this, Gianluca Sartori. He's the one that wrote Smart Target, and he and I were going back and forth working out the bugs on this to get it working just right. One of the things is some of the columns when you use it in PowerShell and some of the sessions when you use it in PowerShell are case sensitive. So we're testing it back and forth to try to remove that case sensitivity. Trying to test it back and forth to get it sent through synonyms up to Azure DB. Things like that. So there's a whole lot of failures out there. But the important thing is when you get down to right here, if you look at this stuff right here, you see one row written, 0 rows written, 0 rows, 1 row. That's logging your activity, as the smart target is running. So you know that it's working properly because it's writing something out somewhere. All right?
Is smart target something that's part of the DBA?
So the XE Smart Target, the log itself doesn't come with DBA tools. You'd have to download that from, let's find the right one. Right here. I'm going to go back one. So if you go to GitHub's Getty DBA XE Smart Target, you can see 3 days ago he actually just updated it with that latest one. So this is the executable version that will give you the logging. And executing it is really easy. You just type in XE Smart Target and then give it the path to your JSON file. Make sure you configure your JSON file and then hit enter. And it's just running as a console command. Okay, it runs until you close the console. All right. So you can do it either that way or you can do it from DBA tools. And I'd recommend that if you do it from DBA tools, make sure you keep DBA tools up to date. Frequently update that on your servers because this was updated 3 days ago, so you'd have that probably in another week. It's going to be in DBA tools with the table aggregator. All right. Okay. Resources. Okay. Now, I joked a little bit earlier about the most comprehensive resource about extended events on the internet. It's right there, bit.ly xe 60 days. And that's comments that haven't come from me, so I just echo those comments. Other people that have read it. And it's not 60 days, it's about 100 days now. There's roughly 100 articles out there about different ways to use extended events, different information tutorials about extended events. I do strongly encourage that everybody actually check it out if you're trying to get into extended events, because I step you through the nuances of extended events and how to get better with extended events and how to troubleshoot different scenarios. All right. So big things right here. This is very true. Rabbit holes. Okay. Especially with PowerShell, you don't know something, you can end up spending a few hours trying to dig in and figure out how to make it work. And with some of my automation that I've created with PowerShell, I found that what works for one specific scenario, after I got it fixed, doesn't work in another case. So you're down another rabbit hole, even though everything's the same. So it's just an evolution, and you go down that rabbit hole. Yes, it can be time consuming, but in the end, the reward for spending that time is much increased capability on your part. You learn a crap load of stuff. You also become a better DBA. And unless you really don't like success, you will get some satisfaction out of it, because and in the long run, even though there is a cost of time up front, there is a reward of less time spent doing menial things in the future, right? So it's a huge trade-off. Spend time up front. I prefer to spend the time up front. And thank you. And then one last slide. And I'm getting really close to the microphone, so now you can really hear me. Upcoming stuff. I forgot about SQL Saturday, Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs is coming up in April, Phoenix in May, and then the week of Summit. If you guys go to seattlefreecon.com, just visit it frequently. seattlefreecon.com will have the information about the all-day event that my partner and I have been hosting in Seattle for the last several years. I think this will be the 6th year. All right. We have had people like Grant Fritchie speak at it in the past, or the Midnight DBAs, or Andy Leonard, or Gail Shaw, So we try to always bring in some people that would be interesting besides, and not as boring as me. All right. So, questions? All right. Thank you for your time. And there's my contact information besides the business card. All right. Drive safe.